The U.S. is tracking a big drop in tourism from around the world. Take a look at this. Travel from Canada and Mexico was down double digits in March. We're also seeing fewer visitors from Western Europe, Central and South Asia, South America, I should say.
Here in New York, tourism is also being hit big time, once again driven by negative sentiment toward the USA.
For generations, the United States stood as the ultimate dream destination. A place of towering skylines, Hollywood legends, and once-in-a-lifetime adventures. From coast to coast, America symbolized more than just a country. It was an idea, a promise, the embodiment of freedom, creativity, and boundless opportunity. But this year, that image is beginning to fade. Tourism across the world is shifting rapidly, and for the first time in decades, the United States is no longer leading the way. The once steady flow of international visitors is slowing, and it's not just about cost or convenience. Something deeper, more subtle, is changing in how the world sees America. In the past, travelers came not only to witness the landmarks, the Grand Canyon, the Statue of Liberty, the lights of Times Square, but to feel part of something bigger. They came to experience what the nation stood for. Now that feeling is being questioned. One by one, visitors are choosing other countries, quietly, steadily, not in outrage, but in reflection. Across continents, a new pattern is emerging: caution. Interest is cooling. The draw of the American dream no longer seems so magnetic. Business travel is shrinking. International student programs are seeing fewer applicants. Even major airline routes are being cut without fanfare. These aren't just headlines, they're signals. Signals backed by data, and the numbers paint a clear picture. Something is shifting, and it's only just beginning. In 2025, visiting the United States is no longer seen as the reliable, welcoming experience it once was. The numbers tell a clear story. According to the April report from the U.S. Travel Association, international arrivals have dropped sharply, especially from key regions like Western Europe. So, what's behind this quiet collapse? It's not one dramatic incident. Instead, it's a slow build, the result of many small moments adding up to something bigger. One major issue stands out: trust. Across Europe and Asia, would-be visitors are voicing growing concerns. Stories of long delays at the border, uncomfortable questioning, and inconsistent immigration procedures are becoming more common. In some cases, travelers report feeling targeted or treated unfairly, even accused, before they've stepped outside the airport. Some have spoken openly about experiencing racial or ethnic profiling. These aren't just isolated complaints whispered among tourists. They're real, documented incidents, shared widely online, picked up by major media outlets, and discussed in households, classrooms, and travel agencies across the globe. In places like Germany, headlines have covered respected professionals being turned away. Students with full scholarships have had their visas rejected without clear explanation. The perception is shifting from excitement to hesitation. And hesitation, especially in travel, changes everything. The shift in perception became official when governments began issuing their own warnings. In early 2025, Germany updated its travel guidance following several troubling incidents involving its citizens. Among them were students and professionals, all with valid documentation, who were nonetheless detained for hours at American airports. According to a report by Reuters, the German Foreign Ministry went as far as to caution travelers that a US visa no longer guarantees entry into the country. It was a strong statement, and one that made headlines across Europe. Japan followed suit. NHK, Japan's national public broadcaster, reported a growing number of cases where Japanese nationals, including engineers on work trips and ordinary tourists, were stopped, questioned, and held for extended periods by US customs officials. Business leaders voiced concerns. Universities expressed frustration, and the stories kept coming. The pattern wasn't limited to Europe and Asia. In Australia, Smart Traveller, the government's official travel advisory service, released several alerts warning citizens about unpredictable airport experiences in the United States. The concern wasn't just about safety, but about dignity, consistency, and fairness. The response from travelers was immediate. Flight Centre, Australia's largest travel agency, reported a 16% drop in US bookings. At the same time, travel to destinations like Japan and New Zealand saw a sharp increase. People were still eager to explore the world, but they were choosing destinations that made them feel more welcome. And that choice speaks volumes. On social media, a wave of Australian travelers has begun sharing unsettling stories. Posts and videos describe invasive phone checks, extended delays at customs, and an overall sense of anxiety at US airports. One traveler shared her experience. "I was questioned by an officer at passport control. Not long after, both my mother and I were taken into a side room. She was eventually released, but I remained behind. I was interrogated for hours and eventually transferred to a federal detention facility. It turned into a 4 to 5 hour ordeal." Her story is just one of many. News.com.au published a widely circulated article featuring first-hand accounts of travelers being pressured to unlock their phones, with the threat of immediate deportation if they refused. The stories aren't exaggerated. They reflect real experiences, and they've struck a nerve. This conversation has now moved far beyond just tourism. It's about identity, values, the image a country projects to the world. For decades, the United States was seen as a symbol of optimism, a place of opportunity and open doors. But now, in the eyes of many, it represents something else: unpredictability. And it's not just individual travelers who are feeling it. Geopolitical tensions have added fuel to the fire. Tariffs, trade disputes, and strained diplomacy have created ripple effects far beyond government buildings. These tensions touch ordinary people through higher ticket prices, canceled flights, and tighter visa policies. Confidence in the American travel experience is weakening. The reaction has been sharp and measurable. In Canada, America's closest neighbor and longtime ally, the response has been particularly striking. According to Forbes, in April alone, air travel from Canada to the US dropped by nearly 20%. Land border crossings fell even more, by over 35%. Canadian forums and news outlets are now filled with voices urging people to skip US destinations altogether. A growing number of Canadians are canceling trips to Florida, a traditional favorite, and instead investing in vacations, and even real estate, in Portugal, Mexico, and other warmer alternatives. Airlines are taking note. Air Canada has scaled back routes to multiple US cities, while increasing flights to Latin America and Europe to meet changing demand. This isn't just a temporary dip, it's the sign of a deeper, more permanent shift in travel habits. The truth is, much of the world still wants to believe in the United States. American culture, music, movies, and technology continue to inspire admiration across the globe. The influence is undeniable. But in 2025, admiration alone isn't enough. Travelers today are looking for more than entertainment or spectacle. They're seeking respect, safety, predictability, and that's where the cracks begin to show. In France, Le Monde published a bold front-page editorial declaring that the US has lost its once romantic image. Once seen as a symbol of adventure and possibility, America is now viewed through a more skeptical lens. French travel agencies are reporting double-digit drops in US bookings. Instead of New York or Los Angeles, more travelers are now choosing Spain, Greece, or even Quebec destinations they say feel more welcoming and less uncertain. And perhaps most striking of all, recent polls show that over 70% of French citizens now have an unfavorable view of American leadership. That's not just a political opinion, it's a reflection of how the country is perceived at every level. Can this global shift be reversed? Absolutely. But it won't happen through glossy tourism ads or catchy slogans. It requires something deeper, real reform in how the United States welcomes the world. That means clearer border processes, better training for frontline immigration officers, and stronger cooperation with foreign embassies and consulates. Because tourism isn't just about hotels and souvenirs. It's about human connection. It's about diplomacy. It's about the first impression a country makes, long before a plane even lands. When people stop coming, it's not just a matter of lost revenue. It's about lost trust, lost friendships, lost influence. If the United States wants to remain a beacon of inspiration, a place that draws people from every corner of the planet, it must fix more than flight schedules. It must fix its image. And maybe that begins with something simple: empathy. The recognition that every traveler, every passport, carries a story, a hope, a dream, and every single one of them deserves to be treated with dignity. That's not just good hospitality, that's what true leadership looks like. But there's another layer to this story, one that's rarely talked about in official reports or glossy tourism brochures. What happens to a country when people stop dreaming about it? When America was seen as the land of promise, it wasn't just a place to visit. It was a symbol, a destination not just for vacations, but for ambition, for hope, for reinvention. That emotional bond gave the United States an unparalleled form of soft power, a kind of invisible influence that shaped how the world thought, felt, and acted. Now in 2025, that soft power is quietly slipping away. In conversations across Europe, Asia, Latin America, and even among long-time allies, the tone has shifted. The US is no longer seen as the gold standard. In some cases, it's no longer seen as the standard at all. In South Korea, major travel blogs and influencers are openly ranking American cities lower on their top destinations lists, not because the sites have changed, but because the feeling has. Language barriers, aggressive security, unclear rules, these things chip away at confidence. In travel, perception is everything. In Brazil, agencies are steering travelers toward Europe or even Asia, noting that visa approval for US trips has become more unpredictable. In India, where the US has long been a top destination for both students and professionals, the question is no longer, how do I get there? But increasingly, is it worth the trouble? This matters a lot. Because when tourism slows, so does everything that flows with it. Academic exchanges, cultural collaborations, business deals, and future investments. Students who might have dreamed of studying in Boston or San Francisco are now applying to schools in Berlin or Toronto. Entrepreneurs once eager to attend conferences in New York are choosing Singapore or Dubai instead. And digital nomads, once in love with the idea of living in a Brooklyn loft or an LA beach house, are settling in Lisbon, Bali, or Medellin. It's not that the United States has lost everything. Far from it. The talent, the infrastructure, the innovation, it's all still there. But for the first time in modern history, the narrative is no longer under America's control. And narratives are powerful. They shape global opinion. They influence policy. They attract or repel talent. And in today's connected world, once a narrative turns, it spreads fast. Now, here's the most important part. This shift doesn't have to be permanent. The United States still holds immense goodwill in many corners of the world. Millions still admire its achievements, its resilience, its creative energy. What's needed now is a recalibration, not of branding, but of behavior. Imagine a future where arriving at US airport means being welcomed with clarity and respect. Where travelers are treated as guests, not suspects. Where cultural differences are understood, not penalized. Where consulates abroad work proactively to make the process smoother, not more complicated. It's possible. Other countries have done it, even turned things around entirely. Japan, once known for rigid visa processes, has made huge strides in simplifying travel for tourists and business people. Portugal reinvented itself as a top destination by investing in hospitality and making immigration more humane and predictable. Rwanda, once overlooked, is now seen as a rising star in ecotourism thanks to smart policy and sincere hospitality. America can do the same, but it has to choose to. Not with slogans, but with systems. Not just policies, but people. Imagine the power of one traveler returning home and saying, "I felt respected. I felt safe. I felt like I mattered." That's how reputations are built, or rebuilt. And for a country that once inspired the world, maybe the first step toward regaining that inspiration is listening. Because in the end, borders are not just lines on a map. They are the first chapters in a much bigger story. And the question for America now is, what kind of story does it want the world to tell? So where does this leave us? At a crossroads. The United States is still one of the most powerful nations on earth, economically, militarily, culturally. It still sets trends, moves markets, and tells stories that the world watches. But power alone doesn't make a place welcoming. Influence doesn't always translate into invitation, and admiration doesn't guarantee affection. What's been eroded in recent years isn't just tourism numbers, it's something deeper. The emotional bond between America and the global citizen. That bond was never just about policies or politics. It was about a feeling, a promise that no matter where you came from, America was a place where your dreams might matter. Where diversity was celebrated, not feared. Where you could belong, even if you were just passing through. But in 2025, many travelers no longer feel that promise. They feel suspicion, coldness, complexity. They feel like they're on trial before they've even entered the country. For some, it's the strict border controls. For others, it's the tense political atmosphere. And for many, it's simply the unpredictability, not knowing what kind of experience they'll have. And when people don't know what to expect, they stop expecting good things. That's the danger. Because once a nation loses its image as a place of welcome, rebuilding that image is not easy. Trust, once broken, takes years, sometimes generations, to restore. But here's the truth that still holds. People want to believe in America. They want to visit Times Square and the Grand Canyon. They want to walk through the campuses of Harvard and Stanford. They want to see the places where history was made, Selma, Gettysburg, Seneca Falls. They want to hear jazz in New Orleans, see the redwoods in California, watch a Broadway show in New York. They want the story of America to be a story they can connect to. And it still can be. But it will require something different now. Not dominance, but humility. Not marketing, but meaningful reform. It starts at the border, yes, with how customs officers speak, with how policies are implemented, with how visitors are treated not as threats, but as human beings. But it also goes beyond that. It means building partnerships with foreign governments to ensure travelers feel supported before they ever book a flight. It means universities advocating for their international students, businesses speaking up for their international clients, and communities across America recognizing the value, the real human value, of being a place people want to visit. Because tourism is not just an economic engine. It's a bridge between cultures, between stories, between lives. When someone travels, they're not just seeing a place. They're trusting that place with their time, their safety, their curiosity, their money, and often their memories. That trust is fragile, and it's earned, not demanded. And when the bridges begin to collapse, everyone loses. So what does rebuilding look like? It looks like reforming the visa process, making it faster, more transparent, less arbitrary. It looks like investing in training for airport and border staff, not just in procedures, but in empathy. It looks like a government that understands that the traveler experience is a diplomatic act, and treats it that way. It also means acknowledging where things went wrong. It means hearing the stories, the long detentions, the denied entries, the canceled trips, and not brushing them aside as rare exceptions or misunderstandings. It means treating them as signs, warnings, opportunities for change. Because every country makes mistakes. But not every country learns from them. The U.S. has an opportunity right now to learn and to lead. To show the world that it's not just a land of innovation in technology or finance, but in human connection. That it doesn't just build walls, but builds trust. That it doesn't just protect its borders, but also protects its image, its promise, its legacy. And make no mistake, this matters. Not just for tourism, not just for economics, but for the future of global cooperation itself. In a time when walls are going up, when mistrust is growing, when travel is more politicized than ever, America has the chance to be different. To remind the world not just of what it has been, but of what it can be. Because when travelers return, when they choose the yes again, they don't just bring their money. They bring their stories, their impressions, their respect. And they carry those things home with them. To friends, to family, to their countries. That's how influence works now. Quietly, personally, story by story.